Hello everyone, this is Coach Toyin, Christian Transformation and Lifestyle Coach and founder of the Narrow Gateway. So I've had a few recurring questions from people that follow my platform on Facebook, on Instagram, asking me specific questions regarding their walk with God. And I thought I should just come up here and do a video to answer one or more. So I think in this video, I'm going to answer the one question that I got yesterday, and that question was a very interesting one. It was a question in relation to when Jesus was tempted by the devil, and the question was, when Jesus was tempted by the devil, the devil said to him, turn stone, you're hungry, so turn these stones to bread. And Jesus said no, and the person wanted to know why. And this question really just said no, and he said no, and the person was saying, what is so wrong with eating bread? As in, he was hungry. What is so wrong with eating bread? And the person wanted to know what the answer to that question was. And for me, this question is very much about understanding the difference between what is good and what is God. Is it good or is it God? Not everything that seems good to you or to us is God. And we need to be able to decipher what is God or what is of God, what suggestions are of God, as opposed to making decisions based on suggestions that become or suggestions to solve the immediate problems that we have. We need to be able to decipher between what is good and what is God. We need to understand that we should not make decisions based on what feels good or what looks good or what seems to or appears to meet our needs, what it makes logical sense, what seems to be morally correct, what seems to be the popular thing to do. You understand? What seems to meet the general sense of what is right and wrong in this day and time. We shouldn't be making our decisions based on that. We should be making our decisions based on the question, is it God? Is it good or is it God? If it is of God, then we should do it. If it is not, if we are not sure that it is of God, we should not do it. Now let me explain what I mean. Jesus had been tempted by the devil because he was hungry. Now he had been in the wilderness for 40 days. The Bible says he had been in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights fasting. Prior to that, the Bible says that he had been baptized by John, and when he was baptized, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and God declared, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." And he was anointed so he was baptized in water and he was also baptized in the Spirit. And the Bible says that he went in the power of the Spirit, led by the Spirit, to the wilderness where he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. And after he fasted, he was tempted by the devil. So legit, he was hungry. His body was hungry. And the enemy, the devil, came to him and made a suggestion. The devil said to him, "Why don't you turn these stones to bread? You're hungry, so turn these stones to bread." It makes perfect sense. It makes all the sense in the world. It will meet your immediate physical need. So why don't you do it? And Jesus replied him by saying what? Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So I'm going to touch on that response by Jesus right now. But firstly, this whole topic of, is it good or is it God? Where was the suggestion coming from? It was a legit need. But where was the suggestion coming from? The suggestion was coming from the devil. So even though the suggestion makes sense, even though the suggestion meets a need, because it was coming from the devil, it means that it was not God. And anything that emanates from the devil, anything that is a solution or apparent solution, it appears to be a solution, but it is emanating from the enemy, then it is not God. Even if it makes logical sense, guys, even if everybody is saying the same thing, even if it sounds good, even if it feels morally correct, the question was not, is it right to eat bread or is it not right? Is it sinful to eat bread or is it not sinful? Is it right to use your power as a person, because Jesus was fully man when he was on earth, fully God but fully man? Is it right to use your power as a person anointed by God to do works, wondrous works in this earth? Is it right to use that power to change bread to stones to bread, or is it not? The question was not about morality. It wasn't about good or bad. And a lot of the time we get deceived or we get sidetracked because we think that the thing that is meant to guide our decisions and guide our mindset about life is it good or is it bad? But who determines what is good and who determines what is bad? As children of God, as people, what we're meant to be directed by is not is it good or is it bad. If you are directed by is it good or is it bad, you will often make a mistake, because sensitivities change over time. Morality changes over time. Culture changes over time. What is good now was considered to be bad 20 years ago, talk less of 100 years ago. So if it's based on, and we all know that God does not change. So if it's based on using a sort of like a temperature gauge of, okay, is it good or is it bad? What is everybody saying about it? How does it feel to me? Does it make sense? Does it feel right? If you're making your decisions based on that, you will often make mistakes. You will often change those stones to bread. Why? Because it will make sense to you. Your question should be, where is this suggestion coming from? Is it aligned with God's will? Is it not? Is it aligned with what God is doing in the earth? Is it not? Is it God or is it just good? If it is just good, then my friends, it is not good enough for you. If it is just good, then it is not good enough for you. If it's just good because, oh yes, I'm hungry, I need to eat. Come on, God knows, God understands. I've been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, and He has given me power to do wondrous works. Why in the world should I not change this stone to bread? If that is your metric, if that is what you're using to make decisions, then if Jesus had done that, then He would have chosen an option that was from the enemy and not from God. And in doing that, He would have sinned. I want to give you another example of Eve and Adam in the beginning. When the enemy, God said to them, "You shall not eat of you can eat of any fruit, but of the fruit in the middle, on this tree in the garden, you shall not eat of it. If you eat of it, you shall surely die." And then the devil came to them and said, what exactly did God say? What exactly? And he questioned what God. He says, "You shall not surely die." The devil said, "You shall not surely die. Instead, your eyes will be open and you shall be like God." And what does the Bible say? The Bible says that Eve now looked at the fruit and it seemed good to eat. She looked at it and she realized that, but there's nothing, it's just fruit. There are other fruit in the garden. What's so special about this one? It doesn't make logical sense. And she applied her sense. She applied what felt good to her, what seemed logical to her in the moment. And because she did that, she did not understand, or maybe she chose not to understand. She probably did understand, but she chose not to follow the instinct of her spirit that would have helped her understand that this was a suggestion by the enemy. Any suggestion that comes from the enemy, even if it sounds good, has a hidden agenda. What was the agenda of the enemy at the time? The agenda was that she would eat the fruit and it would completely change her nature. She would die in the sense that her spirit will be separated from the Spirit of God, the way it was in the beginning, where we were connected to the Spirit. We were living in God, spirit to spirit, right? And we lost all of that. Our nature changed and we took on the nature of sin and death. We took on the nature of this broken world. And of course, the creation was also corrupted, and that is what we're saddled with now, right? But thank God for Jesus, who has made a way for our reconciliation to the Father. But there was that hidden agenda. But Eve looked with her eyes, and the Bible says, to her it seemed good to the eyes. It seemed pleasing, and so she ate. And then came the consequence. And we would have seen a repeat of the exact same thing if Jesus ate. If Jesus had turned those stones to bread and eaten it, we would have seen a repeat. I don't know exactly what would have happened, but we would have seen a repeat of the same thing. Why? Because even though it feels good, even though it makes logical sense, it is not necessarily good. Friends, we're in such a time, in these times, where there are so many suggestions in the world. There are so many mindsets, so many ideologies that make perfect sense. So many, like, come on, this is basic black and white stuff. Like, we shouldn't even be discussing this. We shouldn't even be haggling about this stuff to do with race, gender, sexual orientation, stuff to do with, there's so many things that just make logical sense. They feel good to the human mind, and it feels so right to follow these things. I was in there was a discussion that I was part of recently, where there was a suggestion made, and everybody was like, yes, let's do it. And I was listening to the suggestion and I was thinking, but guys, this suggestion, it was a suggestion to deal with, I'm trying to not give all the information out here. It was a suggestion to do with something, solving a situation or handling a situation that is a difficult or broken situation that we encounter often in this world. Very, very difficult situation. And everybody rallied around, was like, yeah, let's do it, let's do this, let's do it. And the suggestion that was being made sounded good. It felt good. It felt like, and when I was explaining it to my husband later, I was like, it felt 80% right. But there was something about it that made me feel, no, but we're children of God, we're Christians. When we come up with solutions to the problems we see in the world, we cannot come up with the very same solutions that everybody else comes with. Where's the supernatural self? Where's the supernatural power, the enablement by the Spirit to come up with solutions downloaded straight from heaven? Instead, we're coming up with solutions that the world comes up with. It sounds right, sounds good, makes logical sense, but it is missing the power of the Spirit of God. It is missing the power of the Spirit of God. Why? Because we have opted for a solution that sounds good, but is not necessarily God. So I want to encourage you guys, as you make your decisions, as you ponder, sometimes people say to me, Toyin, how do I know what to do? As you ponder on the steps that you need to take in your life, ask yourself, is this good or is it God? I'm not going to settle for something just because it sounds good or it feels good or it looks good, feels logical. I'm going to inquire deeper. Is it God? Is it of God? Is this a solution that has been downloaded from the throne room, from heaven? Because everything that God has for you, all the good gifts are straight from his throne room. If it's not from the throne room of God, it's just not good enough for you. And the second thing I want to say about that passage is this. Jesus responded and said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Very related to the first point. Jesus was basically saying, you know what? The agenda of God. Why am I here in the world? I'm here to reconcile man to God. I'm here so as to help people to be born again, born in the Spirit again, so that the old nature of the flesh and carnality will die, and we will be reborn back into the Spirit life, right? Which is what we were created to live in the first place. So if I am going to allow my decisions and my mind and my lifestyle to be defined by what my flesh drives me to do, then I am going against the plan of God, the things that God is doing in this season. God's master plan is help people, restore people to the God life, restore people to life in the Spirit, where they are not living by bread alone, where they are not living by the things of this carnal flesh. Nothing wrong with bread. Nothing wrong with bread. That's why I said man shall not live by bread alone. He wasn't saying do not eat bread, or do not eat for that matter. He was saying, as people who are alive in the Spirit now, we are now alive in the Spirit. As people who have been reconciled to God, as people who are coming to worship God in spirit and in truth, we must not be so driven by the needs of our flesh that we are willing to compromise on being aligned with what God is doing, on being aligned with the master plan of God, which is to reconcile man to himself, which is to restore man to the spirit life, where we live and move on and have our being in God, where we are driven by our identity in Christ and not by our physical experiences. I'm not talking about hunger, but that is one of those things where we are not driven first and foremost by our emotions, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, what we feel, logic. We are driven first and foremost by that deep connection that we have with God in the Spirit. We are driven first and foremost by what is on God's heart, what is on God's mind, what is in his word, aligning ourselves with his word, being sanctified by his word, which is truth. And that is what Jesus said to the devil. Man shall not live by bread alone. So yes, I am hungry, but I understand that I am spirit. I understand that I'm a child of God. I understand that God has declared, God the Father has declared, that's what Jesus was saying to the enemy. God the Father has declared that I am his son, in whom he is well pleased. The Spirit of the Lord has baptized me. And so therefore, I am going to stand. I'm doing life in the Spirit. I'm not going to be driven by the fact that by my fleshly and my carnal needs. I'm not going to be driven and defined by them. They're not going to define me. Okay? We see many times in the Bible that Jesus ate. So it wasn't a matter of eating or not eating. Should we eat or should we not eat? No. The issue was Jesus was saying to the devil, my flesh does not control me. My flesh does not define me. My carnality does not define me. I am defined. I am aligned to the work that the Father is doing. Jesus said, I only say what I hear my Father say. I only do what I hear my Father do. There was another time when he says, I have food that you do not know of. he spoke to. He was speaking to his disciples. He says, I have food that you know nothing of. He was talking about life in the spirit. He was talking about, I shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And I want to encourage you guys. I hope I've answered some questions or two regarding, is it good or is it God? And what are we supposed to be guided by? I hope I've also answered the question in relation to, or at least giving you some more information in relation to life in the spirit. And I want to really encourage you guys on that. Okay, I want to stop the video now. God bless you. Bye.